South America, sometimes called Latin America, and of course the neighboring area, which is Central America and the Caribbean, has a very interesting history. I remember when we were being taught history, that was called the New World. New because it is the Spaniards specifically who went to that area. And it must never be forgotten that Christopher Columbus, who is said to have discovered the New World, was actually on his way to India. He got lost. And when he met the indigenous Americans, he called them the Red Indians because he thought he was in India. But that in itself makes that part of the world very unique because they were empires which had been built. The Aztecs were there, the Arahuacans. If you look at what is now Mexico, they were the mestizos, they were the Aztecs, complete with civilization. The Arahuacans were to be found in what is today Honduras, in Colombia, in Costa Rica, in Panama, in Nicaragua. So there were people in that part of the world, complete with civilizations. And the Arahuacans, of course, we know, were completely decimated by the Spaniards. The Spaniards went there, and the Spaniards were in Mexico, what is today Mexico, in Nicaragua, they were in Honduras, in Colombia, and of course the Portuguese then found their way in what is today Brazil. The British somehow found their way in modern-day Belize, and the French also found themselves in areas such as the Suriname, and even the Dutch found themselves in what is called the Dutch Antilles. So these new lands became the subject of slavery initially because the local peoples were decimated deliberately by military action and also by disease, because these individuals came with certain diseases which were unknown in that part of the world, particularly the Spaniards and the British, as I've already said, and the net effect is that whole populations were dominated and completely eliminated in certain cases, so that if you go into the Arahuacans now, the people who are called the Arahuacans, who then moved into the island that is called St. Vincent and Grenadines. Their language was wiped away, but is now being revived. If you hear of a language called the Garifuna, that is the language which is spoken by the Arahuacans. But most of the slaves that then found themselves in that part of the world were slaves that were taken to that part of the world. When they had decimated the local population, that is why the Portuguese now started taking people to Brazil. And Brazilians, if you go to Brazil, there is a very large population of Yorubas. There is also a very large population of Ovambo and of Imbundu from what is today Angola and also Mozambique. So once again, you can see it is the colonizers who are coming from their colonies or the areas that they had conquered in the African continent and taking them to Latin America. The Spaniards also took people from their colonies in different, and some of them were not even their colonies, but they took them from Africa in the area that is now called Equatorial Guinea. A lot of Equatorial Guineans were taken out of there, and Sao Tome and Principe, and we find them in the Spanish colony. The British, of course, as we know, took their people from their slaves from Ghana, from Nigeria, from the Gambia, and from Liberia, and from Sierra Leone, and they found themselves in Trinidad and Tobago. In Trinidad and Tobago, you find a large population of people who are of Igbo origin and Yoruba origin. And